Welcome back to the Steve Gruber Show. Glad you're here. I have a special guest today, Rob Schneider, legendary comedian, actor, Emmy-nominated Saturday Night Live writer, as well as got a brand new book. You Can Do It. Speak Your Mind, America. It's out now. Came out last month. Rob, thank you so much for stopping in today.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
So I have a propensity for running my mouth as well, and I've been doing the show for about 14 years, and I've been telling people since the first time we went on the air, free speech in America is under attack. Now, look, you've been out there on the front lines of Hollywood. You're a comedian, which are basically illegal anymore. But, I mean, they are. They don't go to college campuses anymore because they fear they'll be run out by pitchforks and torches. But free speech under attack in America. Let's start right there. It's been going on for years now, and people are like oblivious to it. I don't understand how they don't see what is so damned obvious.
Well, it's something that's been a creep. It's something that they're not doing it overnight. But then you see, and it's the Democratic Party that's doing it, really. I mean, you saw it under COVID, where people were silenced, whether it was scientists who were scared to have their research grants taken away, or whether it was academics who were afraid of having pitchforks in front of their classroom if they said something. And doctors, I mean, simple doctors and who knew something was up, and they were silenced. And it really was the Biden-Harris administration worked with tech companies to violate Americans' First Amendment rights to free speech. And when it was finally exposed, thank God for Elon Musk, when they finally had the hearings in the House of Representatives, which actually Mark Zuckerberg just apologized for the other week for working with tech companies to censor Americans. He apologized. Anyway, when the Democrats were finally exposed in the Harris Biden administration were exposed for this violation of First Amendment rights, instead of recalibrating and saying, hey, we need to correct this, what they did instead was they just doubled down and they just attacked the journalists, the independent journalists who had access to all the Twitter files, which was Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberg. So the Democrats are really, I mean, when they use terms like misinformation and disinformation and malinformation, they're really talking about censorship for what stuff that the government, especially this Democratic administration, doesn't want. Now, free speech is all speech. And the agreeable stuff and the stuff that everybody likes is not what needs protection.
That's right.
Free speech actually covers lies. It actually covers hate, because it's up to the people to decide. Because if it ends up being decided by the government, they're always going to do what's in the best case of government.
The things that piss you off are the things that have to be protected. Via this to make you comply. I mean, that's what it's about. Via this, Mr. Schneider, you will comply, right?
You're talking about, Steve, you're talking about the Noam Chomsky, who was as liberal as you get.
Oh, horrible.
And, he was a free speech absolutist, which is basically, he said Joseph Goebbels and Joseph Stalin were for all the free speech as long as you agreed with them.
Exactly.
It's a speech that you don't. So, and you have now, with Harris and Walz, the Democrat, these candidates for president and vice president, respectively, they are both now saying that free speech is like a privilege, and that somehow, and you see,
it doesn't count for hate speech, it doesn't count for anything that's divisive or threatening. I mean, Tim Walz, a bit testosterone free out there trying to get the male vote. So it is. He is out there taking on free speech. And I've said this for 14 years on this program. It's under attack in America. It has been a creep, but it gets worse and worse. And in fact, when you went out there, you were a vaccine skeptic. That's a good way to put it. You're a skeptic about the vaccine and so forth, right? But then you got this new term. They called you a conspiracy theorist, right?
Well, but if you look at even the term conspiracy theorist, that goes back to the CIA in the mid-'60s when they were trying to squelch any talk about any discussion or any dissent from people who had a problem with the Warren Commission, which had concluded that the Kennedy assassination was a done thing and we would ask no questions. It was one gunman who shot him from the side, somehow from the back. And so that came from the CIA, conspiracy theory. And as we were able to observe during the COVID tyranny, that the difference between a conspiracy theory to a fact was about 6 months, and I think it got down to about 6 hours.
It didn't take very long.
Yeah, it was from, but if you said that it was from the Wuhan virus was somehow from the Wuhan lab, you were literally kicked off Twitter, you were kicked off Facebook, and you had your grants, your research grants taken up.
Oh, you were silenced, you were deplatformed, you were censored, all of that. Let me ask you something, Rob. When you're out there today, I can find no reason. I talked to different, physicians, Peter McCullough, others were on the forefront, Robert Malone. Never take this vaccine. They're still pushing it out there right now. You got to get your COVID update. What do you think when you walk down the street? I know you left California, you live in Arizona now, but you see some poor soul going down the street by themselves or behind the wheel of their car with their mask on. I mean, I mean, it's just terrible.
Well, I know it's funny how they want us to be nice to them, but when you didn't have a mask, in the middle of 2020, you were a grandma killer, and now. When you see the forever Democrat voting, COVID believers wearing the masks on the plane, you hear the pilot coming on and saying, "Oh, this is your pilot speaking. If there's the mask policy is no longer in effect. However, if somebody is wearing a mask, please don't laugh in front of their face. Please don't poke at them and say, it doesn't work." So it is unfortunately, you have fear works. And that's really all the Democratic Party has, because their policies aren't for anything. They're just against. They're just hoping beyond hope that Americans will hate Donald Trump more.
Right, but I want to be clear about this. You spent, 30 years as a registered Democrat. Then you were a Republican for a brief period. I think now you're an independent. But you were a Democrat for 30 years in Hollywood, which was kind of what you're supposed to do, right?
Well, you would think so. I mean, the idea is, as they say, Steve, if you're not a liberal in your 20s, you're heartless. But if you're still a liberal in your 50s, you're an idiot. And so what happened in California was you saw the state taking over the rights and wanting to co-parent with families. And you really saw it. So one of the good things that came out of the COVID tyranny was the fact that parents, when they finally had their kids at home and were having to do, on the computer, if they were lucky enough to have Wi-Fi, that was so sad, was seeing like kids in front of Starbucks trying to get the Starbucks Wi-Fi so they could do their homework. That was, the effects of this COVID tyranny and the lockdowns, we're not going to know for decades. Whether it was for African American kids who finally had caught up to parity with other children in the reading levels, now falling off a cliff.
Yeah, exactly. It's generational, I think. You look at the number of kids. How many kids left high school in California or wherever in this entire nation? Left high school as juniors and seniors and just dropped out and never came back. Where are those people now? Millions of them, I guess.
You even have in LA Unified before COVID. You had a 50% dropout rate. So we're just having if anything needs, any department at the federal level needs to be taken away. It's the Department of Education. We have to leave it to the states. So the good thing was parents were able to actually see the stuff that was the woke nonsense that was being taught in public schools. And for those parents out there who are lucky enough to afford to have their kids in private school, I would just say that's fine. Good for you. But even in private schools, they're doing this woke nonsense. But most kids are being educated in the public schools. And that's what's being cranked out right now. And if you look at the universities, they're no longer teaching kids how to think critically. All they're doing is they're cranking out advocates for a particular partisan ideology.
Having done the college tour here recently, I can tell you that what universities are selling is not an education. It's a meal plan and an entertainment plan. That's what colleges in America sell now for a very high price and send Americans bills for $100,000 that you and I get to pay for when they forgive student loans. Rob Schneider here with me. Rob, I just got to ask you, because back in the day, when government did asinine things, when you're on Saturday Night Live, you would call these things out. It was the realm of the comedian. And Saturday Night Live, it was still funny when you were there. Actually, Dana Carvey was pretty funny the last couple of weekends. I give him credit.
Oh, yeah.
SNL's been hilarious.
Carvey's the greatest ever.
Yeah, just fabulous doing Joe Biden. It's beautiful. But real comedians, Sam Kinison, George Carlin, Richard Pryor, yourself, these comedians that are alive today, even Chappelle and others, they don't go to college campuses anymore because they're afraid of getting, rioted and stoned and run out of town. Comedians are supposed to be the people that say, hey, wait a second, look at this idiocy, let me bring attention to it. You're basically banned.
Well, if you think about it, Steve, that's exactly why the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, when they wanted to really start their whole murder spree, they hired 15 and 16-year-olds to execute their plans. Because the 15 and 16-year-olds, I mean, if the young people will do these absolute horrible atrocities that older people in their 30s and 40s would never think about. So you have young people that are susceptible to this woke mind virus. And actually what you really have, and Thomas Sowell in his book, The Fallacy of Social Justice,
right,
or whether you have Andrew Doyle, or whether the the book on War on the West by Douglas Murray, they talk about this better than I do. But you really have this woke mind virus. What it is, they have it cloaked in terms that sound really good, like social justice. I mean, who wouldn't be for social justice? But what these really are Trojan horse terms that have horrible, ugly things in them. And social justice, what they're really doing is just revenge, cloaked as if it's some sort of good thing. And it is envy, and it really is Marxism dressed up as manners.
It's divide and conquer. Get everybody into little groups, marginalize different groups, target groups like white Christian men, for example. They seem to be targeted quite well these days. They seem to be free game for a lot of these folks, right? But everybody else, everybody's a protected group in America except those, right?
Well, you have really, it's the progressives. And whether you go back 120 years, you have progressives that were saying eugenics, which were saying that these group of people were inferior and we want to breed a better human being.
Simple-minded.
That's how ugly it was.
Yeah.
And now you cut to the same progressives 120 years saying these same people who we said were inferior, when the Nazis came to power, we saw where that eugenics actually led to mass murder. And now you go 120 years later, the same progressives are saying, well, these people, because of the color of their skin, are automatically victims. And these people, because of the color of their skin, are automatically oppressors. So what you really have is, it is communist China. It is the goods versus the bads. It's very much very much Mao. And it is, sorry. Can you
That's all right.
The phone? Just don't mind me. I'll be right there. Well, so what you really have is there was two cultural, you had two revolutions under Mao Zedong. In 1949 was the Cultural Revolution against Chiang Kai-shek and kicked Chiang Kai-shek into the sea, and he went to Taiwan. But 1966 was the Cultural Revolution, when they decided to
Well, you had the Great Leap Forward in 1959 as well, the Great Leap Forward, which was the Great Leap Forward for a few million people to end up in a grave, but go ahead. You're exactly right.
The Cultural Revolution was to unburden by what has been, which is the same, Kamala Harris Marxist speak. And so that's really what we're dealing with. They wanted to get rid of the four olds, which was culture, ideas, and habits, and tradition. So these were the things that they want to get rid of. And this is what Kamala Harris is, when she says to unburden what has been. It's like, hey, but we're not going to do that in the United States, because what we have working here is a system that does work. We're not going to get rid of what is working here, which is including our free speech, which is including our Bill of Rights, which is including the right to bear arms, and all of our constitutional rights. We are not going to give them up. We're not going to unburden ourselves from our freedoms.
Yeah, the brand new book, You Can Do It, Speak Your Mind, America, by Rob Schneider. Let me ask you, Rob, before I let you go. Fighting for free speech, something that you've made, well, your life's work at this point, it sounds like. How important is somebody like Elon Musk spending $44 billion to buy Twitter X, whatever you'd like to call it? I still call it Twitter. I'm old school. But the point is, it's the last bastion on social media. Otherwise, you'd be buried by Zuckerberg and all these other social media platforms and TikTok with all of this indoctrination and all of this PR that's coming from, the Chinese Communist Party in large part every single day. How important is Elon Musk in the fight for free speech?
I would say that Elon Musk is the most important person in the world fighting for free speech. If it wasn't for him, and if it wasn't for Twitter, we have no outlet to it. And you could see why the global elites and the tyrants want to, whether it's Brazil or whether it's Macron in France, you could see why they want to limit free speech. And always people who want to censor.
Don't forget Trudeau.
And Trudeau, the dictator of the North.
Yeah.
Anyone who wants to limit free speech, these are never the good guys. Anyone who wants to censor is never the good guys. So luckily that, Elon Musk loves freedom enough and wants free speech for the world. And he's the one, that's why they're trying to undermine him. That's why they've taken his DEI numbers way down. Tesla used to be on top. And now you had the You have Raytheon and these other war machines. Now they have good DEI because they're for the good war. So we need to end wars. And that's why I would ask people to really talk to your neighbors and would say, and if you have a problem with Donald Trump, he's not going to come to your house. You don't have to have him over for Thanksgiving. But we need to get rid of the blue machine. We need to kick these people out before they start World War III. We can't be having them putting missiles that can go deep into Russia. That is a red line.
No, that's a fool's errand right there. It is a fool's errand. That's Rob Schneider, everybody. Really appreciate him being here, defending free speech. By the way, that's only a portion of the interview. There's a lot more to it. You can find more at stevegruber.com. You can follow me on Substack, become a subscriber, support this program, and support the great sponsors like Hillsdale College, that right now is giving you free pocket constitutions to talk about the things that Rob and I were just talking about. Free speech, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. Gruber for Hillsdale.com. It's free. They'll mail it right to you. You can give it to somebody that needs it. If they don't have it, keep it for yourself. Share with the world the good news of America. Gruber for Hillsdale.com. It is free. A pocket constitution. Back with more.